And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Sam Spril, who writes, "Hey, John and Rob. Well, you called it, John. Avatar is set to be re-released in China on March 12th. Back in 2010, the movie grossed $206 million in China, and now it only needs 7.5, actually it's closer to 7.4, I think, but whatever. It's only going to need $7.5 million to become the highest grossing movie of all time again. Do you think this will happen? Thoughts?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, we've been talking about this for a long time. I mean, when you talk about the history of Hollywood, all the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of movies that come, there can only be one movie, Rob. There can only be one movie that sits at the top of the all-time box office champion. For the longest time, that movie was Avatar. A very good movie. I don't like it. I never got obsessed with it like a lot of people did, but it's a very good movie. Certainly, James Cameron breaking a lot of ground with that movie. But for the longest time, it was Avatar. And then recently, it got overtaken by Avengers Endgame, but by the slimmest of margins, by $7.5, $7.4 million. Now, we have said on this show for a long time, at some point, what's going to happen is you're going to see Avatar get re-released, and it will leapfrog Endgame and become the number one box office film again. And then at some point, Disney will re-release Endgame, and it will leapfrog Avatar. And you're going to have this game of leapfrog going on for a while, and it looks like the game is afoot, ladies and gentlemen. It's about to start. This comes to us from the folks over at Cinema Blend, who write, "According to the Hollywood Reporter, there is a surprise reissue of Avatar headed to the Chinese market, and if you believe reports, the Chinese market is very robust right now. It's actually doing very well. Is headed to the Chinese market, with conventional and IMAX 3D also being included in these late-breaking plans to bring back Jake Sully's journey across Pandora. And with the theatrical market still a bit starved for content, there is a chance that Avatar may become the head of the pack again, especially with the number of this new round of theatrical releases we'll need to cross to make it happen is only about $7.4 million. It's only about $7.4 million that they need to do. So it is impossible to say for sure, Rob. It is absolutely impossible to say for sure. But right now, it looks pretty certain Avatar is about to become the number one all-time box office movie again. Now, this can create this debate, this tic-tac-toe debate about what should count and what shouldn't count. Some people say can't really count Endgame because it was like movie number 23 in a franchise that was built up for 10 years. Some people say you can't really count Avatar because it's going to have a re-release in there. Some people say you can't really count Endgame because of inflation. Some people say, at the end of the day, the number's the number. Whatever's number one is number one, and that's just the way it is. But I think we're about to see Avatar take number one. And then at some point, I think Disney will re-release Endgame and we'll see it become number one again. But yeah, I think it's going to happen. Rob, you take a look at this situation. Are we about to see Avatar become a two-time champion at the all-time box office? What do you think?
Well, I think so, because one, it's great publicity for the upcoming 100,000 Avatar movies that James Cameron is making for Disney. and two, to be honest, I mean, Avatar in IMAX was one of the most extraordinary theatrical experiences I had from an audio-visual standpoint in my life. I mean, that was by far the best 3D I've ever seen. And it hasn't been in theaters for, 12 years? So I think there's a whole generation of people in the Chinese market that have never seen that kind of 3D before. And I think re-releasing it makes sense. And I think it might generate, a new legion of fans. I mean, isn't Avatar the one franchise everybody wants to say, well, this left not one bit of a footprint in the pop culture landscape, even though it's the most successful movie ever? And I think, well, why not start re-injecting Avatar love into the population? And this is a great way to do it.
And Rob, that's exactly what we've been saying for a while, right? It's like with them having a new Avatar slew of movies coming, we knew they were going to start prepping the earth, tilling it a little bit by putting Avatar back out in theaters again. to get everybody reminded that they used to love Avatar and you reintroduce them to the world. Now, this does bring up a debate about it has always been the case that re-releases, even Endgame's re-release, like a month or two after it came out in theaters, re-releases box office does count towards the box office gross of a movie.
Yeah.
And there has been a debate about whether it should. I am firmly in the camp that it absolutely should count if there are people who are willing and wanting to drop money to go and see that movie in theater, and you putting it back out, it still has enough interest that people actually want to do it. Because I've heard some people say, well, you could re-release any movie and it's going to make $1 million more. No, it won't. No, it will not. Most movies you put out 5 years later, it's like, what? Why would I go to the theater to watch that movie I didn't even like when I can just watch it on Netflix right now? And that was like 5 years ago. If you've got a movie that people love so much that they are still willing to drop money to go see it on the big screen again, it should absolutely count. It is box office. That's the name of the record. Box office. And if it continues to get it, then it continues to get it. And when Endgame eventually does get re-released again, guess what? That money should count too. And Endgame should take back the number one spot. So I can't, but I don't know, Rob, what's your position on that? Should re-release box office actually count towards the box office total of a film?
Yes, I think 100% it should, because it's people going to the theater to see the movie again. As a matter of fact, if what people forget is a company like Disney, that was their bread and butter. For decades, they would re-release their animated classics because people before home video, people would go and see them over and over and over again because that's the way you would see them. And, Snow White was made a long time. It was re-released in the it was released in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even the 80s. And people were going to see these movies, and they always counted toward the box office of the film. Movies like Gone with the Wind were re-released, Wizard of Oz, of course, and then with the advent of television, things were shown on TV. But still, I think re-releases are incredibly valid. And to get people to go back to the theater after 10 or 12 years, absolutely. And, I'm a huge Avatar supporter. I really enjoyed Avatar. James Cameron, he can do no wrong as far as presenting films, and he really knows how to make movies, I think, better than anyone else as far as action cinema goes. It's an extraordinary achievement in filmmaking that people just take for granted now, but there's a reason why it made as much money as it made when it originally came out.
All right, guys, the question for you is, what do you think about this? It looks, it's not 100%. Who knows? It may or may not, but it looks like, at any rate, they're forecasting that Avatar is about to overtake Avengers Endgame as the number one box office movie of all time again, which I'm sure will be relatively short-lived because then Endgame will come out and hopscotch over it. But what do you guys think about this? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys.